Welcome to the EMDC podcast, where you get to know the people, places, and possibilities behind the global EMDC community. We're glad you are watching or listening. I'm your host, Tim Cowley of Expat Media Pro and Global Creatives Collective. My co-host is the founder of EMDC, Steve Ballman. EMDC is a global community of Jesus followers who have been generally meeting together at a conference venue each year. In 2020, we rolled out an online platform for ongoing training and connecting, and with that, a big growth in serving and connecting more people into our network. Through this podcast, we aim to create community and provide encouragement by talking with communication experts who use their particular expertise to more effectively share the gospel in mainly non-Christian regions.
For our 5th and 6th EMDC podcast episodes, recorded on November 17, 2020, audio and radio experts Chris Singh with WEC in the UK and Pierre-Yves Mutrux with Galcom International, based in Canada, will share with us about the impact that audio ministries in various forms are still having today.
I'd like to drop a little bomb here, bouncing on what was said before, like your video is only as good as your audio. I heard at the last EMDC that 90% of your video is actually the soundtrack. So I'm asking the question, why don't you invest 90% of your budget on the sound equipment?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm sure that a lot of people would push back on that and wouldn't want to do that, right? And so what we're trying to say here today, that's right.
I'm sure that's why I know it's a bomb, but think about it.
I just have to be kind to Tim right now, because Tim's got a graduate degree in videography. So, we'll have to be kind to him now, because, he was kind enough to have you on his podcast, your audio guys. Now, just don't push it too far. You know what I mean?
No, it was digital storytelling, and so I have some leeway there.
Right.
And
okay. All right.
It's so true. In documentary film production, if you don't have good audio, you can't really tell a lot of what's happening. I mean, pictures are worth 1,000 words and yada yada, but you do have to have good audio. That's important. But this kind of asks the question, if I were talking to someone, they might say, come on, guys, you're so last century. Radio died, didn't it? I mean, there's this funny movie that I like. I won't mention the name because people might be offended with it. But, there's this guy in there that throws this big celebration, this big event, and he's from the AM radio station. He's like, this is our chance to come alive again. AM radio is gonna rise from the ashes. So as radio people, how do you see the present?
Well, let me just chip in, and then Pierre can come in. We have been hearing in the 90s or even in 80s, when I was in India in 80s, that now television has come. Radio is dying a death. What happened? Television took a charm for a year or two, and then people went back to radio. And then in the 90s, internet came. They said, now we have the internet. We have got audio in it, we have got video, we have got visuals and music and whatever you need at your fingertips on demand. And radio is dead. What happened? Internet came, and people took charm to it, and then suddenly, by mid-2010 and so on, people came back to radio, and now radio is the main part of any social media that is there. Like, all the phones were made with FM built into that, and now even the internet is doing online radio, and also the main traditional radio is all there. The phone I have has got an app called BBC Sound, and that has got all the radio stations that BBC has, not only the UK ones, but also other languages and so on. So, and people listen to radio on their mobile phone. It doesn't mean that they are listening to mobile phone, but they are actually listening to radio. So we keep hearing, and I've been hearing for the last 30 years or so, 40 years, that radio is dying at that any day, and we will say RIP on radio. But it hasn't happened so far, and I don't see it will happen.
Yeah, and I had heard that too. So in one of my graduate programs, I did a thesis, and I wanted to study this. So I did some interviews with North Africans that had come to Christ from their former faith, and they were overwhelmingly gave testimony that they had heard about Christ on the radio. And of course, this is 20 years ago, before the internet, and everybody had a smartphone in their pocket. But let me just finish that the idea that they said in their testimonies, said in my research, they said, because I can go in my bedroom and listen to the radio. And everybody had a radio in their bedroom, but in our house we only had one television, and I couldn't watch the Christian broadcasting in there with my parents there, or with my brothers who would beat me up or something, and I could go in the room and listen to the radio. Radio was much more personal. Television was much more, video was much more group, and radio was much more personal. Now, of course, a lot of that has changed with everyone with their phone in their pocket, but again, that comes back to what I said before. Now it's not exactly maybe the radio as we know it. Maybe it's a podcast, but maybe it is listening to the radio on your phone. So like Chris said, it just keeps coming back from the ashes, as it were, the predicted death that it would have.
When you get a new toy, there's nothing in the world that counts more than a new toy. And I think this is a little bit what happened with the different media that came into existence. Of course, everybody was interested, and internet was the answer, or TV was the answer back then. But I think it comes back once you realize, oh, actually, and this is the situation we are in now, because now you have different subdivisions of internet-based media or means. Like podcast is only one among others, and I think we have now to take one step back, or fly from a higher altitude, and see that there's a variety now of channels and means to reach out to people. And this is the way I want to look at things. For every group or situation, there is one specific, or maybe more than one specific or efficient mean to reach out to these people. And this is actually a blessing that we have nowadays, as we have all these different options, and depending on who you want to reach, then you can use one or the other platform. If you want to reach someone who's in a big city, with internet access that is already paid for, then of course you're going to use that. But there are lots of countries or places where people don't even know what internet is, and if they have an FM station in the town, it's already a good thing. And I've been across towns where they didn't even have a radio station. Based on the ministry I'm involved in, I see that this is still reality for many people. And so I think we shouldn't try to shoot at those doing something different than we do. In case some people wanted to misinterpret what I said, I have absolutely nothing against those who do video. If you do it well. But it's there are different answers to different problems.
Yeah, one thing I saw in Africa was you could get a very cheap Chinese radio, but it also has the SD card slot in there. It has a micro SD, so even wind-up options if you're away from electricity a lot. There's all kinds of ways that they're still being produced, and people still tune in, and they'll leave it on all day long. And I kept seeing batteries being taken out and put in the sun to recharge a little bit longer, then they stick them back in. I mean, audio, as a video guy, I have to say, I think audio still is king.
Can I tell you a story?
Amen.
This story is from Sudan, because I was working in Sudan from 2007 to 2011. That was with the UN, and I was responsible for the radio station there, UN Radio. And I was posted in Juba in South Sudan, where people do not have electricity to charge their mobile phones. Mobile phones had come, and they had those small ones at that time. So they would bring it to the market, and there would a guy with an inverter and sort of 10 or 20 sort of plug-in sockets in there. And people will go and do shopping, and they will hand over their mobile phone to him, and he will charge. And while he's charging, so there was a missionary there, a lady, and she got hold of some micro SD cards with Bible and songs and different thing in Arabic and other languages which were local to them. And while contacted this guy who was charging the phone, and told him, look, these are free micro SD cards. If somebody comes to charge for charging the phone, would you give it to them? and say there is some music and some stories on them, and take them. And they would take it for free of cost. I mean, of course, he was making some money. He was charging maybe 10 cents or 20 cents per chip, but doesn't matter. The gospel was going across, and then the people will come back after 2 weeks or so, saying, "I've listened to all the stories. Can you give me another one?" And they will just exchange the card. And this happened in Sudan while I was there in Juba, and also in Chad. There was one of our lady missionaries. You know her well, Jill. She has been attending EMDC. And she has been doing that in Chad, of all places, in Arabic. And these mobile phones, and these are all audio, and some people got Jesus film on it, and they didn't have a smartphone like this one. They had a small one with a very tiny screen on it, and they would just glue to it and look at it, and then they get tired, and then they just put the phone down and they will just listen to the story. The movie was still going on, but they just went to audio.
Back to audio.
And I thought I'll just because you mentioned micro SD card, so I thought, that story came to my mind, and I said that's a great way of spreading the gospel, and people are so used to this.
Jesus Film even realized that years ago that people would be unable to watch or would tire or wouldn't be good enough screen. So they created a version of the Jesus Film that was for audio, and they added narration where they would say he's walking up a mountain or he's about to approach a crowd, something that you would see, and the narrator with a specific voice would give that additional thing. And they said that was hugely successful in the form of audio cassettes, and then later they could just put it on the radio in audio forms. So just with a few little additions, then you could just use the same soundtrack basically.
And you see, South Sudan is a very good example, because now you start to have radio stations in all corners, and this is actually the country where we send the most of these little portable missionaries, radio players, solar charge, 100,000 in South Sudan. And this is amazing, because you can send them a new content every day. So this is just another means, not saying it's better. Well, in our opinion, is the more efficient for your money. But I don't want to say it's better than another mean. It's very adapted in very specific situations.
Yeah, in Mozambique, what I got to do was find out who the person was in the market, or how many of them there were, that people would go, they've got the computer, and they'd say, hey, here's my SD card, can you load it with content? And I got all the stuff in the local language of Chiao, where I was working, and all the Bible stories from Faith Comes by Hearing and scripture passages and all these things, and just gave them to this guy so that he could then give them out. And I never heard back about it, but I know that word was getting around, and these were definitely, that's how you spread it into the community, and they love it. Even if they're hardened Muslims, if they hear the word of God in their local language, right, it's sacred.
Yeah, I was in Pemba, in Mozambique. You mentioned Mozambique. I was in Pemba doing a training in North Mozambique, and in Pemba there are 3 main people groups, and there is nothing in their language on local radio. So a Christian radio station was started. They got the license and everything, and FIBA Radio and IBRA, they got together and put a radio station and put these 3 main languages. And these were the people we were training to have them. And they have got even a better response than the local radio, which they have already, which obviously only broadcast in Portuguese and not in the local language. So that's the beauty of these small languages, which you can distribute on radio. If not on radio, then on micro SD cards or on Galcom's missionary.
Yeah,
so I thought I'll just mention it.
That reminds me. And both of those last two comments remind me of the story. If you have to go back in your mind to the 90s now, so I'm at a conference for North Africa, and they said on the spur of the moment, they said, Steve, this guy wants to give his testimony in French, and would you translate into English or vice versa? I can't remember. Yeah, that's right. He was speaking French. So I put it in English. And he was telling the story how he had come to Christ in the big city this will relate to several of your stories. Even Pierre-Yves talking about where they have access, they use it. And he made a big trip way back in the mountains where his monolingual mother, who only speaks the Berber language of that area, he went back to tell her that he had come to Christ in the big city. And when he got there, she said, he started telling her some things, and she said, "Yeah, I know all that." He said, "What are you talking about?" She said, I listen to it every day here on my radio." And she had had a radio for years, but it was always in the major languages of the area, Arabic and French. And when they started doing a radio broadcast in her mother tongue, she began to listen to it avidly. And she had already herself come to faith in Christ. And he's telling the story, and I'm translating it. I literally was supposed to be translating. I had to turn to him and said, is that true? Before I translate this, so I was almost in tears just translating that. So that was just a beautiful example of.
Very good. Yeah, that's true. And that's the heart language, you see, because you can give the gospel in a major language of the city, but when you start speaking the heart language and you tell people that Jesus loves the people who speak this language, you say, what? I've never met somebody of that caliber to know this language or speak in this language. So that's where it was. I mean, going back to South Sudan again, what's the ministry called in Ghana, who works with different languages? I think Theovision. Theovision works with Faith Comes by Hearing. And I happened to be in South Sudan in Juba when these guys came, and they wanted to record the local languages, not the Arabic and not the Juba Arabic, but local languages of South Sudan. And I helped them on their small portable Tascam machines, and they recorded that. And then they just put it on a micro SD card and distributed it in South Sudan, and people had the gospel in their own language, which they could never even imagine. It's not written. This language has no roots, but it's a dialect, and here's the gospel coming in their own dialect to their own people.
Theovision is a national organization that's doing all kinds of media in Ghana, and they're doing a great job.
EMDC. That sound means our conversation will come to a pause as we check in with our episode sponsor. Learn more about our sponsor, Galcom International, by visiting galcom.org.
There are 3 billion unreached people around the world, but with only 0.1% of Christians serving as missionaries, how can so few workers reach those who urgently need to hear the gospel? The answer? Radio. Galcom exists to help pastors and missionaries multiply their impact with audio tools like the Omni Station, all-in-one broadcasting system, the Galcom Streamer internet radio system, and the new Compass, solar-powered radio and audio Bible. Galcom has sent over 1 million radios around the world. We'd like to partner with you. Visit galcom.org.
Yeah, in January I went to Chad, and our task, among others, was to record a 10-session healthcare scripture training. And so we had to figure out how to set up a place in the house for a male recording and a female recording in another place in the house. And we had all these, foam mattresses, and we created these little forts and everything. And it just was so beautiful to hear that you can do something in this, concrete structure to make it sound beautiful and professional. So, it's just always, I'm blown away. When I was in Mozambique, I would find the closest washed out gully, and I would go in there to do my voiceovers for my video stuff because it was quieter down there. So there's always ways, no matter where you are, to and I'm going to admit to you guys, I almost joined a radio ministry because my internship during college was in Honduras at Radio HRGS. That, I was a full-on audio guy until the bug of video and photo took over. So I'm a little bit of a chameleon, so I want to say I'm one of you guys. I'm hanging with the fellas here.
It doesn't matter. I'd like to bounce on something you just said. There are two things that cross my mind, and I'd like to just drop the idea for our listeners here. First one is quality. You made all efforts to have a good quality recording, and if you keep that in mind, you are going to go a long ways. The other aspect I wanted to address is also based on something you said, Tim. You gave out these cards and never heard any return. Before you start any initiative, consider the long-term sustainability of it. That's an important aspect. If you want to go a long ways again, it's not a one-off. It's not for your own good and feel good feeling. It's to serve God in a long term and try to reach more and more people.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes, you do definitely have to think through a strategy. How if you want feedback, how is that going to happen? I think of WhatsApp groups now where you can share audio recordings on WhatsApp groups. Is there a phone number that you put there so that somebody that's a total stranger can get in charge or in touch with you to be able to have a face-to-face meeting or something with a believer? Yeah, that's good, Pierre-Yves. Yeah, so I like to ask one thing. I'm asking lots of things, but what is it that you love about EMDC?
Well, let me take the lead on this one, and that's something that crossed my mind again very early in this conversation. Is that you started talking about the existence simply of different languages and different backgrounds, and even though the conference is mainly in English, it's not an English-only conference. It's really a cross-cultural thing. And this is the aspect I like the most because you have people from different backgrounds, maybe not all around the world, but limited to maybe focused mainly on Central Asia, though it's expanding now a little bit. But this is the beauty of it because you can do whatever you want in your own language. Of course, you talk about it in English, but there's an anchor in different languages, and that's the beauty of it. And as being a non-native English speaker, it's kind of important to meet people who understand that, because life is not English. Real life is in all different languages, as we heard. Hearing the gospel in your heart language is key. And of course we use English or maybe French or Portuguese in different countries, or Hindi, I don't know, to communicate. But the bottom of it is your local culture, and that will stay. That's one aspect I like, the cross-cultural thing that is present at all time at
Yeah, that's
EMDC.
what I like about EMDC is interacting with people from different backgrounds and using sort of different media as well, because although it's a media conference, but the way people interact with one another, they tell stories about their interaction with the local groups and so on, and it's amazing the collection of stories and interaction with the folks, and making friends. I mean, since the days of EMDC in the last 10 years that I've been connected with it, I have made hundreds of friends, and a number of people have come to my training. I said, "How did you hear about?" Oh, somebody told me about it, and that's why I thought I'll join the session on audio, because although I'm a video person, but I want to improve my audio and so on. And some people like ethno arts and so on, and the cross cultural between media. I mean, intermedia connections. Because although I was running the audio and radio sessions, but a number of times I have been asked by the ethno arts, and I've been asked by the oral communicators, the oral storytelling, and say, "Chris, would you please come and do our sessions for us?" And that interaction, I really loved it, because it's not that this is my area, please don't interfere. No, we are all doing it for God's kingdom, and I can just see the taste of heaven. I mean, wherever. That's why I look forward to, and as you said already in a number of times, it's the highlight. I mean, I was looking forward to this March, April, and I was preparing it, and so on, telling people that I'm coming, are you coming? And also Steve knows that I have introduced a number of people who never got the invitation, because it's invitation only. And because I was so much blessed by EMDC, that I said, well, you need to be there. You need to be there, because the ministry that you are doing, actually, it will multifold. It will become multifold once you are there. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. That was one of another point I wrote about EMDC is you actually whatever interactions you have is multiplied by 1,000 because say we have 1,000 people, then you have all these multiple possibilities which you don't have if you do a one-on-one or one-to-many video session. This interaction, meeting someone you never know, you never even heard about, or never know he was there, or someone, a ministry you don't know about, and you just stumble across their booth or someone, and then you go to Steve and say, hey, I need someone who does this, and Steve says, oh yeah, go see Tom, and he's there,
That's
and
right.
that's just amazing. And the other aspect I find is also very interesting is you go there with like-minded people focused on something very similar, though media means so many different things. Still, you find people you can learn from and you can share your experience with, and this is just so
Yeah, and we're trying
valuable.
to continue that.
So in
just a
present-
minute, Tim. We're trying to continue that. Sorry, I'll be quick, Tim.
This is my question, I think, Steve. Yeah,
Okay,
you're
well,
going
we're
for
trying to continue that with what we're doing.
Online
that's right.
training.
What we're doing here, and that's great. We're thinking the same thing, Tim, is the idea that each person brings to the table what their specialty is. So, for instance, Pierre-Yves has already had a session on loudness and whatever. So many people were blessed by that session. They have they could go to a TED Talk maybe or a YouTube and maybe get the technical part of it, but not the interaction in the chat box and not the direct questions to Pierre-Yves. And we're trying to keep that alive, that community. And Chris said a minute ago, that it was meeting all the different friends and people. And I guarantee you, they are not all your domain people. You end up having a friend who's an artist or a friend who's a storyteller or whatever, not a technical person at all. And that just broadens your horizon of, oh, I see, that ministry could go that direction, or that could help me learn this. And so that's what we're trying to do now, even keeping the community alive online with that, so that we can cross-pollinate with each other and learn from each other in domains that we're not specialists at, but someone else is.
The most interest I had for audio stuff was actually from video people.
Right.
Unexpected.
It's good to hear.
Sorry, Tim.
Good to hear. Yeah, so online, as we have EMDC.online now, what kinds of things are there for people to learn about audio?
Yeah, we just had in fact, I just finished the session right before you, before this recording started, but it was on the various technology options that are out there, and a lot of it was about social media and the different platforms that are available, and there were so many questions in the chat box and so many answers in the chat box to the people asking the question, even while the presentation was going on. So audio, there is another session coming up way down the line by a German guy that's living in France, and Pierre-Yves should get to know him, but he's really focused. The entire thing is audio recording, gets started with voice recording and optimizing with a very small budget. So he's going to show how the choices you could make on equipment, and how to do it with makeshift studios and that kind of a thing. Just the kind of thing that someone would need for to get started if they want to do the first efforts in audio. That's one of the sessions that's coming up.
I'm registered for that session. Looking forward to learning something.
Good.
Yeah, because I mean the audio platform is changing. I mean, I started with the tape and cutting blades
Analog,
and editing
yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
Analog, and now we are into digital area, and now there are so many software available, and there are even free software available. Because the first software we bought was CoolEdit, and CoolEdit was the king of audio software. But now there's no longer, because there are so many have come. Adobe bought CoolEdit, and Adobe Audition became one of the big ones, and then all those other things. But now you just look for editing software, audio editing software. There are hundreds of them. I mean, Audacity is the one which we have been teaching, and it's free, and it's a shareware, and people have been using it, and it's got all the bells and whistles you could think of. And then acoustics is another thing. I mean, Pierre specializes in that.
Yes.
Acoustics and microphones
right.
and so on. Because your sound really should be great. I mean, you may have a wonderful content, but if it's not presented in the right package, then it's a waste of time. So all these things will be included in audio learning. How to make your sound, how to make your content in a good presentation. So even the reading skills and the presentation skills and the background music and where to use sound effects and so on. So all these things really add up, and people know that you can take a story and make it into a wonderful presentation. Contents remain the same, but the way you act it, enact it, and the way you present it, the way you add music to it and put emotions in it, that's all part of. I mean, I'm talking mostly about the software side of audio presentation and audio techniques. Pierre is the one who talks about the technical side of it. So that's why we complement each other, because that's what I loved about Pierre, because he was able to say, people had lots of technical questions. I said, well, sorry, he's your guy. So go to Pierre.
Just to close the loop and going back to teaching, nowadays you can get cheap stuff or free, like Audacity and more, and microphone. You can get good microphones for not much money. So it's not anymore how much money you can gather and spend on fancy equipment. Now the bottom line is how good you can use that, and this is encouraged and developed by good teaching platforms.
So many people have been able to enroll in EMDC online that wouldn't have been able to attend an actual EMDC, and so they're getting the training even to. So, that's the kind of thing we're looking forward to doing, and hoping that as each person, as I said before, brings his expertise to the table. Even these two guys right here just complement each other. Can you imagine in the broader community how much we would complement each other, all of us bringing our expertise to the table so that we can get the job done together?
Yeah, so what advice would you have for people that want to get into audio production or radio? Should they go to college for it? Should they join the EMDC online? How would you suggest that they get involved?
I think that's maybe a more general statement or answer than your question. But if you want to do a good job, and you should be wanting to do a good job, first of all, it's very good to have some professional experience in life. Learn a job, go practice your job, and learn what it means to work professionally. Not necessarily mission focused or anything very specific, audio, media, whatever. Whatever you've learned, go do it good, and then you look into the next step. Next step might be a cross-cultural experience. If you want to work cross-culturally, then just go and find a short term and do something cross-cultural, so it opens your horizon and you start learning about what the things are, what's happening in different regions, how the things are happening in the different region in a different language, and based on that you will make up your mind and find your way in life. But if you don't have that solid background, you're gonna be tossed here and there. You can start today and do some YouTube videos, but they won't be very efficient and interesting unless you're very gifted. Everybody can start making a YouTube video today. Making a good video series or good content, interesting content that will serve God eventually, and through serving people, it takes a little bit of strategy, as you used the word earlier, Tim, to go into something that will last a long ways.
I'll just complement that with a phrase I use always in my training. That is said by Confucius in 15th century, and he said, "I hear and I forget, I see, I remember, I do and I understand." So the practical part of it, as Pierre said, go and do it and keep rubbing it until it shines, because in India we do our utensils in brass and metal and so on. And the maids who come to work in our home, they just keep rubbing it. I said, what are you doing? You will take the metal away. He said, no, sir, it should shine, because then only it will look good in kitchen. And the more you rub, the more it shines. So that's what Pierre is saying. And I think we give them the tips. The training, you ask the question whether they should go to the college or is short courses at EMDC enough. And I would say the short courses at EMDC are very much tailored to the needs. In college, they hear or learn 80% of the material which they will never use in their lives. Only 20% maybe they will use if they practice it. They will get to know the theory and so on. But what we do in EMDC in the courses that we have done is that we tailor it so that they can just go and start using it. So they are just sort of ready-made, tailor-made for them. Sometimes they may find the theory about it later on, but at the moment the need is to get the thing done and done in a short time and done it perfectly and beautifully. So that's what is the beauty of short courses at EMDC.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I know a lot of us run into people that are younger that want to get into this, and so that's a question that I think we get quite a bit. One final question as we wrap up. I'd like to know what, if we can geek out for a moment, what are some of the exciting technological advances that you are excited about these days?
Well, while I'm home, I'm doing a thought for the day. Every day I do a thought. And then I started using it on WhatsApp, so sending to my friends in India and so on. The number of groups got onto it, and they said, well, can we share this on our group? And every group has 256 members. So I've got about 15 groups who are taking this thought for the day and spreading into the groups. Every day, every morning, people get on their mobile phones a new thought. And that is over 4,000 people getting it. But then people said, it would be good if it would be on YouTube as well. So I started using YouTube as well. They say, can you share it on Facebook too? And the same thought goes on Facebook and then on Instagram and Pinterest and all those social media. And I said, well, I never had so much response in my life on radio when I was doing radio programs and so on, which I'm getting on social media. Every day I see so many likes and people are saying, oh, only just now I got some YouTube saying, thank you, Chris, for your message. It was just relevant for me today because the thought you shared was so much of relevance. So that I'm really excited about social media, and I'm seeing this, that you don't need a license, you don't need to set up a big radio station, and you don't need a staff of 10, 20, 30 people. You are just one man, and you can do a lot. So that's what I'm excited about, that the technology at our fingertips can actually take us to the ends of the world.
You know, at the time of the Roman Empire, they started building roads. And this was actually very instrumental to spread the gospel. And much later on, we started having radio and then TV. And that was another means that God allowed us to have, allowed man to develop. How can you talk to someone who's thousands of kilometers or miles away if it's not via this invisible thing that's called a radio wave? That's actually quite amazing. God allowed mankind to find it and harness the diffusion of the gospel through that. And I see internet as being exactly the same thing. And the current world situation with the lockdown, we can see that the different means are being used even more efficiently now. So just praise God for the different means we have. It's not that the media landscape is not divided; it's multiplied. So I think that's quite amazing. And my motto is, let's use the time before it's too late.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you guys for your discussion today. This has been really rich, and I'm excited. Makes me want to get back into radio. Oh, that's why I'm doing a podcast. So it's another form,
right.
but it's
That's
still
right. There
using
you are.
audio. But
There you are.
I had to do the video aspect too, so that we can try the YouTube thing as well. We love to hear from people that are watching and listening, and so please get in touch with us by email. You can go to podcast@emdc.live, and that is our new domain name. So we look forward to hearing from you. That's part of our M bag, as we're calling it. I like to think of, we just expect all these messages that are going to be showing up someday in our inbox. And guys, do you have any way for people to get in touch with you directly or your ministries?
Yes, I mean, we have a website, weciinternational.co.uk. There are ways if people want to get involved in the ministry or want to know how ministry can be done in a different country, they can connect with that. So that's one way of doing it. If people want to write to me directly. They can write to me as well, and we can make the email address known to needy people. So yes, I would be delighted to hear from people directly.
And I would send the guys to our website as well, galcom.org, that's galcom.org. Or you can write an email at galcom@galcom.org, and it will be then directed to whoever can answer.
Great, thank you. I never shared with you the podcast I'm listening to these days, so I'm going to end with that. There's a Phil Vischer has, he used to be the VeggieTale guy. He's got something called the Holy Post. So it's kind of a mix of a lot of American culture and stuff. But then there's politics has been very much on my mind lately as an American. And so I've been listening to The Dispatch, which is an interesting, very professional kind of news roundup. And then the thing that I always go back to, though, because I'm a long distance runner and I like to listen to things while I run, is Above and Beyond Group Therapy, which is just trance music. It's just electronica, and I feel like I'm connected to this global movement of people that love electronica music. So I bet you didn't know that about me, but now you do. So I've never been to a rave.
Did not know that.
So thank you so much, guys, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you guys in person or online.
Thanks, guys.
All of those things are good. God bless you and your ministries as we
Thank you for the opportunity.
continue on, pressing
Thank you
on.
very much. Thank you.
Be sure to join us for the next 2 episodes when we'll be talking with Clyde Tabor and Keith Williams about ministry-focused websites. Thanks for tuning in to the EMDC podcast. Feel free to share it in public forums with those you think will find interest in our topics. If you have any comments, do reach out by emailing podcast@emdc.live. Head over to emdc.info to learn about our upcoming online trainings, read our blog, find resources, or learn about our physical conferences. Original theme music is created by our very own Schwartz Gray Band.